We begin this news hour in Turkey and Syria, where tens of thousands of search and rescue personnel are working to free survivors still trapped under the rubble in freezing conditions after Monday's two powerful earthquakes. More than 5,200 people have been killed and thousands more are injured. The UN is warning the death toll could jump eightfold. The Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has declared a 3-month state of emergency for the 10 provinces affected by the quakes. International efforts are being stepped up to help, with 70 countries pledging aid and emergency teams. Our chief correspondent John Cookson begins our comprehensive coverage.
They're digging with bare hands. This brave attempt to save a child's life in the Syrian province of Idlib being repeated across a region hit by yesterday's catastrophic earthquake. The fate of the rest of the family is unknown, but at last she's safe. Across the border, rescuers in Turkey search in freezing temperatures, hoping to pull more survivors from the rubble. As the hours tick by, they look among tangles of metal and concrete, knowing those who lived but are trapped can't survive for much longer without food, water and warmth. And for those who survived, thousands are homeless and in need of tents, medical care and sustenance. In Syria, survivors found solace at a Maronite monastery in Aleppo, a place of safety and kindness.
نحن اليوم من الصباح الباكر من الساعة 4:15.
Brother George Saba said, "We're looking after about 800 people here. There isn't a space in the convent that isn't being used by the elderly, children, men and women." And an inferno at the Turkish port of Iskenderun. Many millions of dollars of goods from all over the world consumed by a wildfire sparked by the quake. Winter in the region is especially harsh. Intense cold and snow, adding to the despair of people who've lost homes and family members. The head of the United Nations is calling on countries around the world to respond with generosity.
The United Nations is mobilizing to support the emergency response, and so let's work together in solidarity to assist all those hit by this disaster, many of whom were already in dire need of humanitarian aid.
Rescue teams are being dispatched to Turkey from across the world, Pakistan being one nation that's responded to the call. And the Turkish people also want to help their fellow citizens. This was Istanbul airport, where hundreds of volunteers searched for flights to the earthquake-stricken region. Experts say there's a crucial 72-hour window to recover the living from under the rubble. Failure means these collapsed buildings will become their tomb. John Cookson, Arise News.
And John Cookson joins me now from London for more. John, what's the latest that you're hearing about the overall picture in Turkey and Syria?
Well, the overall picture, Charles, is as last night. The devastation there is just very hard to comprehend, frankly. The focus very much tonight, I think, on the living while they search for those under collapsed buildings. There are 380,000 people, Charles, in makeshift shelters in Turkey at the moment. Some of the lucky ones are in hotels and shopping malls, anywhere where there's shelter in the area. But as I said in my report, Turkey looking for more tents, although I have to say Turkey is well used to looking after refugees. They're hosting at least 2 million refugees from the Middle East at the moment, spilling over from the Syrian civil war. Be that as it may, they still need more resources. More resources, we know, is pouring in from all over the world, from countries like the US, the UK, and as far afield as Taiwan and Mexico. All the countries seem to be pulling together to get resources into Turkey. But it's a grim picture, not only in Turkey, where it's an absolute catastrophe, but in Syria, if it can be any worse, it is worse. Syria, of course, afflicted with civil war for all those years. Much of the region affected in Syria in rebel-held hands. In other words, they're unlikely to get much help from the regime in Damascus. And even tonight, Damascus is saying that they want to control the amount of aid and assistance that goes into that region. So that's bad news for the northwest of Syria. So the overall picture tonight is pretty darn grim, and freezing temperatures again, meaning that a lot of people are going to have a very, very rough night. One can only hope and pray that the rescuers that are pouring into Turkey and Syria get to where they need to and start getting more people out. But, time is really ticking away at the moment.
Well, absolutely, John. And beyond search and rescue and the immediate health concerns, I mean, we're hearing that tens of thousands of families, you mentioned that, need help. Thousands have been left immediately homeless, and lots of concern about communicable diseases.
Yes, not for the immediate few days, but certainly if aid can't get to the region and people can't be moved out of there is a distinct possibility of all the horrible diseases which often follow these kind of events, like diphtheria and other diseases of a similar nature. There is this spectre in the future that this might happen. But as I say, at the moment, the Turkish authorities seem to be concentrating on getting the living to somewhere safe. And all the time, there are slight tremors as well. There's aftershocks, and you can see with the weather there that snow's falling, temperatures falling rapidly again tonight. As far as people who are trapped underneath rubble, time really is running out. The body can kind of cope for 72 hours, but then the lack of oxygen, food, and especially water starts to take its toll on the body, and people simply pass away. I'm hearing stories tonight, Charles, that some people trapped under rubble still have their mobile phones with them, and they're sending text messages out to relatives and rescuers saying, "Get me out, I'm here, I'm still alive." But it's so hard to get to them, and some of these messages are so poignant, and you cry when you sort of hear what's being sent out to family members saying, "Please come and rescue us."
And John, you know this region well. You've covered it comprehensively. There is a large, I understand, vulnerable refugee population in that region, isn't there? About 4.2 million refugees from what we've heard. And there is, as you said, snow in parts and the rain in others. So for those people who've been made homeless, it's a pretty awful time to be trying to survive.
Yes, and some of them were homeless already, and Charles, some have lost relatives, close relatives, in the Civil War. So now there's this terrible thing that's happened to them, that they've been caught up in this nightmare as well. I mean, my goodness me, how do you get through that psychologically? Yes, thousands were in tents and in refugee camps as a result of the long-running civil war in Syria. I also was struck by the fact that the quake not only struck the borderline between Turkey and Syria, but even as far south as Latakia, which is a cosmopolitan holiday city and a home to Russian forces, as it happens. And so, the scale of it is just quite incredible. Tens of thousands, probably, of square kilometers affected, and millions of people overall.
John, for the moment, thanks very much indeed. John Cookson, Arise chief correspondent there. And a little later in the programme, we'll be crossing live to southern Turkey to get the latest on those rescue efforts with our correspondent who's on the ground there.